Good morning and welcome to Las Vegas. If you were at the last Expo ConAg show in 2020, you might recall that the theme was Better Together, which emphasized how important it was for NRMCA, NSSGA, and PCA to leverage their respective strengths as individual trade associations to make our collective efforts even stronger. Fast forward to 2023, and we've co-opted that theme for this year's slogan, Building the Future Together. In short, we're still strongly emphasizing the critical role each of these three associations play in achieving our common goals. As my predecessor as board chairman, Bill Sandbrook, did in 2020, I will begin with NRMCA's two signature undertakings, Build with Strength on the building side and its counterpart on the paving side, Pave Ahead. Since the last show year, the Build with Strength banner has figuratively flown in more state association meetings, engineering and architect gatherings, local, regional, and code adoption discussions, and member outreach efforts. Under the guidance of Lionel Lemay and his group of experts located throughout the U.S., Build with Strength has steadily grown in stature and awareness throughout the built and sustainability environments and will continue to do so. You'll hear much more about that from Lionel and his colleagues throughout the convention. Same thing for Pave Ahead, so to speak. Thousands of cubic yards of concrete have been placed across the U.S. thanks to the diligent efforts of our promoters under the guidance of Brian Killingsworth. And as with Build with Strength, Brian and his nationwide group of field promoters will provide more detail on Pave Ahead's increasing effectiveness throughout the next few days. Other services that benefit all of us include an increased effort to have our voices heard on Capitol Hill. Here, NRMCA's government affairs team is constantly coordinating with its counterparts at NSSGA and PCA to ensure that we present a unified front on issues which concern us all. We have more to tell on NRMCA's ever-expanding education efforts also. Classes have regularly sold out thanks to the diligence of Eileen Dixon, Colin Lobo, Gary Mullins, Kevin Wagenbach, and many others. You'll also hear more about those efforts in the rest of the convention. I thank you for your time up here, and let me turn the microphone over to my friend and industry colleague at NSSGA, Karen Huback.
Thanks, John, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming today and coming together for this week of our joint industry conference. I am thrilled to be speaking with you this morning in Las Vegas. It's quite a different atmosphere than the last time we were here together in 2020, isn't it? This meeting is a valuable time for our association members to meet, network, and learn about our industry's work and priorities. Over the past 3 years, we have seen that working together creates great success. Some examples of these include the notable passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act in 2021, our promotion of material neutrality, and our efforts on tax policy that affect our businesses. Though this joint meeting only occurs every 3 years, it is evident the staff of our associations talk and collaborate regularly throughout the year. Now, with the fresh start of the 118th Congress, our advocacy and education work is essential. The collaboration within our industries continues, most recently with the ongoing implementation of the IIJA and our efforts to keep the exemption of aggregate-based materials within the new Buy America policies. This united relationship is a great benefit for every association member. We strive to ensure each issue and member's voice is heard in Washington. Now I will turn the podium over to you, Filiberto Ruiz with PCA.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Karen. I first want to say that it's an honor to work with you and John, as you are both such accomplished and respected leaders in our industry. When I became PCA board chairman last December, one of my top priorities was to build on the relationship PCA has with NRMCA and NSSGA. The reasons for this are simple. 2023 will have its challenge and its opportunities. There are dozens of companies represented in this room today, each with its own mission, but all with a common vision. The voice of our three associations working together will have more than 3 times the volume of each of us working separately. This collective voice will be stronger and resonate more, positioning us more prominently on the national stage and giving us more to say in how our industries will move forward toward our shared vision of a more sustainable future. As Karen was mentioning, the 118th Congress is now in full swing. PCA's top objectives on Capitol Hill will benefit our industry as a whole. One goal is to pursue fair and reasonable federal air emission regulations. As we know, we have some of the most extensive and reputable information on this matter, and will strive to be recognized as such as we pursue a more active role in congressional and federal agency discussions. A second PCA goal is to ensure that the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act meet legislative intent and advance our association's priorities. Our government affairs teams work hard for the passage of the infrastructure bill, and now has a direct line of communications with the administration's infrastructure coordinator, who you'll be hearing from in a few moments. Finally, PCA TOP's ambition this year is to advocate for policies that recognize the technology, funding, regulatory and market innovation needed to implement our roadmap to carbon neutrality. Our associations will rise or fall to the beat of the same drum. This is why collaboration is key. As I mentioned, we have established a direct line to the nation's infrastructure coordinator, the Honorable Mitch Landrieu, so much so that he taped a brief message specifically for us today. Mr. Landrieu received national recognition as New Orleans mayor in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. He is credited with jump-starting the city's economy and reinvigorating its communities. He brought the city back. In recognition to his outstanding leadership, Mr. Landrieu was appointed in 2021 to head up the nearly $1 trillion infrastructure effort. He genuinely appreciates our association's contributions and said he was honored to provide this greeting. We'll see here.
I'm Mitch Landrieu, Senior Advisor to the President and the guy he brought on to implement the historic bipartisan infrastructure law. On behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, it's an honor to be with all of you today. President Biden ran for office to unite our country, to restore the soul of America, and just to get things done. He committed to rebuilding the backbone of America, the middle class, by creating good jobs with better pay and dignity for working people. And I'll start off by saying that we're here to work together to deliver on that commitment every single day. Under the President's leadership, we're once again investing in the American people, the very people who built this country. Once again, we're investing in the American products for which we all have you to thank. I recognize that lots of your work is so important to what we're doing with the bipartisan infrastructure law. You all played a historic part in the passage of this infrastructure bill, and now it's paying dividends, and we could not have done it without your help. In our first 15 months, we have hit the ground running. For example, we recently announced more than $2 billion at the beginning of this year for large nationally significant bridge projects. The Golden Gate Bridge in the Bay Area and the Brent Spence Bridge connecting Ohio and Kentucky, the Gold Star Memorial Bridge in Connecticut, and the Calumet River bridges in Chicago. We're investing in bridge projects that would not be possible without the bipartisan infrastructure law. These are just a few examples of the transformative changes coming to communities across the country that have been needed for so long. When communities have safe, modern, and resilient roads and bridges, it means first responders can get to calls more quickly. It means more reliable shipments for businesses, and it means safety when Mother Nature strikes. And as all of you are acutely aware, Mother Nature has struck hard recently. From the flooding in San Francisco to the winter storms in Texas, we've had a lot to respond to. And from my time as Lieutenant Governor of Louisiana and as Mayor of New Orleans, I know firsthand how challenging it can be to get it right. Right means building back quickly with resilience and sustainability at the forefront. Every day, your associations are doing the important work of helping us to deliver that sustainable and resilient infrastructure across all of our country. On top of that, we're deeply appreciative that you all continue to invest in the research and development of low-carbon cement and concrete blends and carbon capture. We look forward to working with you to reach carbon neutrality in the coming years. Our administration applauds your efforts to decarbonize your industry. We look forward to continuing to work with you to make our nation's infrastructure more resilient, more sustainable, and safer for all of us, today and for many years to come. Your commitment to investing in America has been tremendous, and now we look to the future. This year, our biggest focus will be on awarding funding from our grant programs to specific projects, getting dollars out of the door, and telling the story. More than 20,000 infrastructure projects have started across the country, and thanks to President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, and we have many, many more to come. And as we make progress, we need your help. None of these projects will be successful without your expert execution on the ground. So in order to make our partnership work, we're here to help you navigate everything that's available in the law. We've got workforce programs, resources, and technical assistance available across the federal government. You can visit build.gov to find out more about how we can help you and the communities that you serve. We've even published a notice of funding calendar so you and your teams can get ahead of the curve and prepare as we build fast and we build right. Through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, and most importantly, through partnering with you, we're delivering on a once-in-a-generation opportunity to rebuild our country. I'll end by re-emphasizing that as we build these projects, we're going to buy American products, and American manufacturing. As the President laid out in his State of the Union, we're now proposing new standards to require construction materials used in federally funded infrastructure projects to be made in America, right here in America, and he means it. It's all part of our economic plan to invest in America again, and we look forward to all of you being a major part of it. So, on behalf of President Biden, let me thank you for what you've done and what you will do. Our best days and our best building are ahead of us. Thank you again.
Good morning. It's great to see you and to have this opportunity to gather together. Let's take a look at a short clip about CRH and our work.
At CRH, we turn big rocks into small rocks. And from those rocks, we make great things. From building some of the world's most iconic structures, to roadways and runways, bridges and buildings, to beautiful backyards. Our products are everywhere you live, go, and work. But we do more than that. We innovate and strive to shape the next generation of sustainable solutions. We want to become a net zero business by 2050, achieving a 25% company-wide reduction in absolute emissions by 2030. We are a family of families to more than 70,000 people across the world. We strive to earn their trust and commitment every day by being an employer of choice, creating a world-class safety culture, and our commitment to building an inclusive, diverse, and equitable workplace. We have the breadth of products and materials to deliver globally and locally for our customers. We stand together to reinvent the way our world is built. We are CRH.
CRH is proud to be a member of NSSGA NRMCA, and PCA. We value our collaboration with our peers and associations in strengthening our industry, and today is an excellent example of that. It's now my pleasure to introduce the legendary Ironman, Cal Ripken Jr. Known for his 21 seasons with the Baltimore Orioles, which were packed with him breaking professional records. During his time as a player, he always displayed perseverance, endurance, and a strong work ethic. I think he would have been successful in our industry. These characteristics endeared him to fans and transformed him into a national icon. Today, he is the president of Ripken Baseball, which currently owns and operates minor league clubs, youth baseball facilities, a memorabilia company, and a management and design company that builds athletic complexes. He was also named a special advisor to MLB Commissioner and advises the MLB's Youth Programs Department on strategies and initiatives. Now, as an inspirational speaker, Cal Ripken Jr. is the personification of leadership, commitment, and excellence. Today, we look forward to hearing stories from his illustrious career, as well as his keys to success that apply to the business world. Without further ado, please help me give a warm, let's see, I think we're going to actually watch a short video first.
Leads off, rips one, goodbye.
We might as well get rid of the suspense right away. Not only has he penciled it in, but Baltimore manager Phil Ripken has penned in the name. Cal Ripken Jr., shortstop, batting fifth.
As I experience another new beginning with this induction, I can only hope that all of us, whether we have played on the field or have been fans in the stands, can reflect on how fortunate we are and can see our lives as new beginnings that allow us to leave this world a bit better than when we came into it.
Without further ado, please help me give a warm welcome to Cal Ripken Jr.
How you doing, man? Thank you. Thank you. Wow, hello. Wow. Thank you so much. It's a different experience watching the video from behind because everything's backwards. But I did notice, did you notice in the speech for the Hall of Fame where the Hall of Famers are sitting behind me. Did you pick out a few people back there? I just noticed the commissioner had these big sunglasses on, and I swear he was sleeping during the time I was talking. But the Hall of Famers do wear sunglasses back there, and some of them, I think, nod out for some of the longer speeches. I think mine was about 10 minutes, which was okay. I am that guy that played 2,632 baseball games in a row. And I am, thank you. And I am that guy that broke a record that was thought to be unbreakable, Lou Gehrig's record of 2,130 games. And because I did that, everybody automatically thought I had this secret to longevity, to endurance, to perseverance. And they'd all come and ask me about it. Say, Cal, man, this is amazing. Nobody else has done this. How in the world did you do it? What's your secret? And I never knew how to answer that question. I would say, I don't know. I just like to play, and it just kind of happened. And normally that answer would be okay until Derek Jeter asked me that question. So Derek Jeter asked me that question at the All-Star game in Colorado. I think it was my 16th All-Star game, and it was his very first. So he's bouncing around asking different people all kinds of questions, gathering up some wisdom in only the way that Derek could do it. So he pops up to me and says, Cal, I feel tired sometimes after 2 straight weeks. You know, and I think maybe I should ask Joe Torre if I can get a day off. How in the world did you do it for like 16, 17 years in a row? And I just looked at him, I go, Derek, I don't know. I just like to play, it just kind of happened. And he gave me this awful look. Now, I've been scanning the internet and I haven't found a bad picture of Derek yet, because I'd like to get that look so you would feel what I felt at that moment. I felt like I let him down and that I should have had a better answer, so he made me feel bad. So I walked away from him and a reporter grabs me and says, Cal, is your record unbroken? We thought the other record was unbreakable, and since you broke it, is your record now unbreakable? And I went, no, if I can do it, certainly somebody else can. And he followed up with a second question. He said, what traits would a player have to break your record? So the light bulb went off in my head and thought, this could be the basis for my answer to Derek. So I sat down and I started listing out some traits that it would take for a player to break my record. And I came up with a list, 8 pretty quickly. And I looked at them, I was proud of my list, and I went, man, these things are pretty good. Maybe, just maybe, if I develop these things a little bit more, maybe I can parlay this into a book deal. You laugh. Is it up on the screen? There it is. The 8 elements of perseverance that make the difference. But what I'd like to do is take you back to that original list that I jotted down for my answer to Derek. That raw list, and give you some thoughts behind that. And maybe there's a couple stories that make that point along the way. Because when you got assigned an author, they cleaned it up. They said I was redundant in certain areas, and let's shape the book so it would really sell well. It's still selling, by the way. You guys can still get it. So my original list. Number 1, you got to have the right approach. Number 2, you have to have a strong will to succeed. Number 3, you have to have passion. Number 4, you have to be competitive. Number 5, you have to be consistent. Number 6, a person of conviction. Number 7, strength both mentally and physically. And number 8, you have to have the ability to manage your life. So let me take it from the beginning. You have to have the right approach. All this means is, to me, is you got to have the right attitude towards your job. And no matter what job you're in, a lot of people say it all starts with attitude. And to me, that made total sense. It starts with my attitude. And my attitude as a baseball player was, I got a pretty good job. I get to come to the ballpark every day, and my job was to come ready to play, and if the manager chose me to play by putting me in the lineup, then you played. It wasn't my job to choose the lineup or beg out of the lineup. My job was to be at the disposal of the manager. So if you think about the streak was formed by a collection of managers writing my name in the lineup every day. But it was my attitude and my willingness to do that that made that all work in the end. Number 2, you got to have a strong will to succeed. To me, this is all about drive. Do you ever wonder where your drive comes from? I mean, sometimes you kind of think it's hardwiring. It's how I was born. I kind of think that a lot of it is developed over time. I think it's probably both. My strong will to succeed started to show itself in the form of bad behavior on the athletic field at a very early age. So if things didn't go my way on the athletic field, I threw a tantrum, I threw a fit, I threw a helmet, I threw a bat. Sometimes I even threw fists. All those things that made my mom just cringe while she was watching me. But the cool part about that was how my mom reacted to it, or how she didn't react to it. There's a tendency to want to go down there and grab me by the ear, drag me off and said, if you can't control this, you're not going to play baseball anymore. You're not going to play football or soccer. All those things that your parents, you feel when you're watching this happen, you feel you got to do. But my mom was really patient. She waited till things calmed down. And she came to me and asked me, she goes, what's going on at that moment when you do that, when you do these things? What are you thinking? And as a young person, I couldn't explain it very well. I was just thinking, ugh, just bothers me so much. You know, there's this power that comes over me. And my mom stopped me. She goes, the power is good. What you're doing with that power source is bad. She goes, why don't you do something positive with that power source that you have? And I said, like what? She goes, why don't you do push-ups? You can't do push-ups anymore, because then you'll benefit from strength. Why don't you go for a long run, with that power source? Let it propel you to be in better shape. Why don't you shoot 100 baskets, take 100 swings? She was trying to get me to direct that drive in a positive direction. And I'm thankful for my mom, is that you don't get it right away, but that concept, you keep trying that concept, and that worked really well for me. So when my son, I got a picture of my son there to remind me, my son was about the age, that was my last year through the league. He was about 8 when that picture was taken. I started going to watch his games, and he had the same sort of issue I did. All of a sudden, he was getting mad, throwing, and I was getting really embarrassed. I'm thinking, people know who I am, and you're embarrassing me, son. And I wanted to go down there and grab him and say, you can't play. But I remember what my mom did, and I sat down and I tried to do the same thing as my mom, and I was having some success. So I called my mom up and said, Mom, remember all that times that I've really made you cringe when you watched me on the athletic field? My son's got to be at least as bad as I was, probably worse. And I'm just looking for a little empathy, hang in there, whatever, a word from my mom. And my mom said, ha, good luck, and hangs up. So sometimes that comes around. Number 3, passion. You got to love what you do. If there's one thing on this list that allowed me to break that record, I absolutely love being a baseball player. And it's the love of what you do that takes you through the hard times, the bad times, the tough times. Because no matter what you do in life, there are going to be hard and tough times. So case in point for me, I'll take you all the way back to 1988. And I realized when I was in the green room thinking about 1988, I went, that's a long time ago. And I'm aging right before your eyes. But 1988 was when my dad was awarded the job as a manager of the Baltimore Orioles. I was the starting shortstop. My brother Billy was the starting second baseman. So if you're looking at it, this is pretty good. You got dad and 2 sons on the same team. So we start out the season. We lose the first 6 games of the season. So we're 0-6. And they fire my dad. They fire my dad after 6 games. Fire my dad after 6 games. And so Billy and I, we got to get the team together, and we all decided to lose 15 more in a row just to prove it wasn't his fault. I'm glad you laughed at that. And because that was intended to be, lighthearted or something, I don't know. But we did lose 21 games in a row to start the season. We were the worst team in the league. We got all the national attention, all for the wrong reasons. It doesn't get much worse than that. So it was the love of what I did that kept bringing me back, searching for solutions, trying to get through it, trying to work through the challenges and to get to the other side. And in some ways, it's one of the worst things. I wouldn't wish that on anybody starting in baseball, because every time somebody starts a season without a win, our name gets brought up, and we go all the way back. I wouldn't wish that on anybody else, but it made me a better teammate. We all thought the world was against us. We learned how to do things a little bit differently. And it was loving what you do that much to come back, because it would have been easier to step back and say, somebody else, deal with this, or I got to get out of here, I got to leave this team. But it was the love of what I did and in the place that I was that carried me through that. So if there was one on this list that allowed me to do that, it was passion for the game. You got to be competitive. We all live in a competitive world. By and large, I think we think that's good. In my world, the obvious forms of competition, I thought everybody really rose to the occasion. Team versus team, hitter versus pitcher, some of those small competitions in between. But there were two forms of competition I thought was really motivating, and they weren't so obvious. So those two were competing against yourself. We all compete against ourselves in some ways, set our goals and all that kind of stuff. Number two, and this is a little more controversial, is competing against your teammates. Okay? So the first one's pretty self-explanatory, is that you just have to be honest with yourself, try to be a better player, try to gain skills that you don't have, make your weaknesses into your strengths, and then honestly evaluate yourself. And that gives you the motivation to work out in the off season and be a better player. The second one's not so easy to explain because you're on the same team. Why are you competing against somebody else? So let me give you a little context. I was drafted as a shortstop/pitcher. They gave me a choice to be a shortstop or a pitcher. I said I want to play short. So pretty quickly in my minor league career, they moved me from short to third because they thought I was growing fast and I just outgrew the position. You're better as a third baseman. So I was developed as a third baseman all the way through the minor leagues. I got to the big leagues, got my feet on the ground in the big leagues, and Earl Weaver one day decided, I'm going to put you back to short. So I'm thinking, okay, I haven't played there in a while. And I think that move was considered a temporary move to bolster the offense. We weren't playing real well. Let's mix up the lineup. Let's put Cal at short. We get another bat at third base. And by the way, that temporary move lasted 15 straight years. But because the way it was presented, there was always some young whippersnapper shortstop that was going to take my job and move me back to third. So in the old school days, and I witnessed some of this, is that if somebody was coming out for your position, you wouldn't be very nice to them. You wouldn't say, okay, just come in here, let me teach you, and so you can take my job. But I thought that'd be stupid. If somebody was good enough to push me back to third base, we would be a better team. So what I did was, I helped them out in spring training, all the different plays. I gave them the wisdom, explained things to them, made things easier for them. But I tell you what, anytime that we ever did anything on the field, ground balls, cutoff and relays, any time that we were practicing, to me, that was a direct competition with that shortstop. So if somebody was watching, they'd say, hey, that kid's pretty good, look at him. Look at him turn double plays, look at him take ground balls, and then look at me side by side. So they would say, this is what I would hope they would do. He's pretty good, but he's no Ripken. And I will tell you that motivated me all the way through your working out. I played basketball against younger people because I wanted to have them push me. I made them quit before I quit. So if there's something in your lives that you're looking at, because once we have success, and once you sign a long-term contract, especially in sports, you become a little complacent. You become a little satisfied. What are some of the things in your life that can make you feel the same way you did when you first came in? That you feel that same sort of energy and almost that territory that you're going to protect as your own. And so that was very motivating for me. The next one, this is one of my favorites. You got to be consistent. So it's kind of weird. My definition of consistency is you can't always get the game-winning hit, and you can't always make the game-saving catch. It's all the things you can do in between those two that will define your value. It's all the contributions you can make on a daily basis that will make you irreplaceable. So as an offensive player, I hit third for my team most of my career. Your job description basically is you're one of the better hitters on the team. Swing the bat, hit doubles, extra base hits, home runs, drive-in runs, score runs. But if I had to, I could sacrifice bunt. I could bunt for a hit. I could hit and run. I could move a runner to second, third. Heck, I could even steal a base. Now, for that last one to occur, the pitcher would have to fall asleep right about here. That happened a few times in my career. As a shortstop, my job description is you're in the middle of the field. You have some responsibilities, turning double plays, steal coverages, those things. I called every one of the bunt plays, for us. I made every decision on hit and runs and steals coverages, managed throws from the outfield in the form of cutoff and relays, and heck, I even called pitches for the pitcher. Okay, so I'll let that sink in for a minute, Because when you watch a game, ordinarily, let's see if I can do this again, you get down in a squat, and the catcher puts down a series of signs. 1 being a fastball, 2 is a curveball, 3 is a slider, wiggle's a changeup, this is a sinker, this is a cutter, 5 might be a high fastball. So you get the idea. Catcher is giving signals to the pitcher, and the pitcher is out there going yes or no. He has a choice of throwing that pitch. So what I'm telling you is that at some point in my career, I gave the sign to the catcher, and the catcher gave the sign to the pitcher. And if the pitcher ever shook his head, I was pissed. Now that's very, very unusual for that to happen. And let me give you how that happened, how that occurred. We had a pitcher that was the #1 pick in the country by the name of Ben McDonald. Do you guys remember Ben? LSU. When I'm talking to some of our kids in camp, I say, you guys know Steven Strasburg? And they go, yes. I said, Ben McDonald was the Steven Strasburg of his time, clearly the #1 pick, and we had to be really bad to earn that #1 pick, which we did the year before. But Benji moved through the system really fast based on his talent alone. We had a rookie catcher by the name of Chris Hoyles that he was just getting his feet wet. And Ben McDonald, so as a shortstop, you get to see all the choices. And then you get to see all the results of the choices, right? And I kept thinking, no, don't throw that, don't throw that. Oh. And Ben and Chris would throw the wrong pitch at the wrong time. And that was getting in the way of his development. So one time they were talking on the mound for a really long time, bases loaded, 2 outs against the Oakland A's. I'm out the shortstop going, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? What possibly can you be talking about? Run in, I go, all right, what's going on in here? And they said, it's a really important moment in the game, and we don't know what to do. So I step back, I go, okay, let me give them some direction. So I go, okay, that hitter, dead red fastball hitter, he's gonna be sitting to hit your fastball early in the count, throw him a curveball on the first pitch, he'll be surprised, he'll take it for strike 1. Then he won't change his approach. He'll hit the same way. Let's throw him a curveball on the second pitch. He'll take it, strike 2, and then he'll spread out to guard the plate. Let's finish him in with a fastball right on the inside edge, and we'll go score you some runs. So I run back to my position feeling like I gave him some direction, gave him a little leadership. So sure enough, Benji takes the first pitch, throws a curveball, breaks right in there, right down the middle, strike 1. He gets it back, takes a peek at me at shortstop, and then he goes back, second pitch, curveball, drops it in there, strike 2. He gets it back, and now he's feeling a little bit more confident. Back to the mound. And sure enough, he throws the perfect 97-mile-an-hour fastball that has a little tail to the inside. The hitter goes like this. Umpire rings him up. And now Ben's running off the field, looking over his shoulder at me as if I'm the smartest guy on the planet. And I am. So what happened after that was every time Ben thought, what do I throw now in this situation, he didn't walk halfway to the mound or to the catcher, call him in. He walked halfway to shortstop and called me in. And damned if I didn't give him a series of pitches, and he executed to perfection. So then what was happening is his confidence was going up. He was pitching better. He was all of a sudden showing his potential. And Ben was calling me in so many different times. I said, Ben, I'm here for you. I can't keep running in here all the time. You know, it causes the game to slow down, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't I develop a set of signs with the catcher when you need me? So Chris Hoyles, if you're sitting behind home plate and you're thinking, I don't know what to call here, all you have to do is look out at me at shortstop and go, Cal, what do you think? Open your glove, and I will give you a sign. So if you're Chris Hoyles, and you're looking out for help, if I touch this side of my body first, could be this, could be anything, fastball to that side of the plate. If I touch this side of my body first, anything on this side, fastball to that side of the plate. That's a curveball, that's a slider, this is a changeup, and this is a forkball, okay? So you would think, God, everybody could figure that out, right? But nobody's looking at the shortstop, you know, for calling pitches. So what happened was, very quickly, Chris Hoyles started going, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I called every one of Ben's pitches, and he went on like a 6 or 7 game winning streak. You know, he was all of a sudden, we had Mike Messina, who was a very good Hall of Fame pitcher, and he was better than Mike Messina. And so Chris Hoyles also caught other people because he was our main catcher. Mike Messina, I mentioned, Jamie Moyer, Fernando Valenzuela at the time. And sometimes he'd sit behind home plate thinking, God, what do I call for Mike? And he goes, Cal, what do you think? So I will tell you that that developed into me calling every single one of the pitches for every one of the pitchers for a period of time, and we were really good. We got good and started winning during that time frame. Now, it is an added contribution that's outside of my job description, and we kept that a secret for the longest time. And I only tell you this now because I like to brag. But sometimes you got to find yourself working outside of your little area of responsibility. And I found out that I was really good at that, and I was able to help in that sort of way. So I often wonder, although it never happened to me, if Ben McDonald was pitching one day and Frank Robinson wanted to give me an off day. If you want to say, Cal, you're 0 for your last 20, you could use a day off. And Ben was pitching. I wonder if Ben and Chris Hoyles would have screamed bloody murder saying, no, you can't take him out of the lineup. He's calling the pitches. So don't start watching the game now and try to look at the shortstop for calling pitches. I would imagine, I think I put that story in the book, and a couple of shortstops around the league told me that they had a relationship with the pitchers, and they started making suggestions like I did. So maybe that exists a little bit. But I say that is sometimes you have to go outside of your area of expertise to help the bigger picture. Next one. You got to be a person of conviction. All this means is that there are certain times in your life you have to stand up for what you believe in. And when you do that consistently enough, sometimes you're referred to as stubborn. And stubborn in our household growing up was kind of like a badge of honor. My dad was called stubborn. We were encouraged that if we believed in something, to stand up for it, and we were supported. And so there was really only two types of stubborn in our household, the good stubborn, and then if you were just arbitrarily being uncooperative, then that's the bad stubborn. So sometimes my mom tried to teach us kids the gray area of stubborns. And she would use my dad as an example for that. One such story was during snowstorms, we had bad snow removal. So my dad had access to an old farm tractor, built a plow behind it. We plowed out the neighborhood every time it snowed. One time in the worst of snowstorms, we go up to the barn to start the tractor. Didn't start. So he's looking around for this crank, because it was an old tractor. He was going to crank the tractor. So he calls us around. I was 16 at the time, just got my license. And he's calling us around. He says, okay, I'm going to teach you guys how to crank a tractor. And I was a bit of a smart aleck. I go, Dad, is this really a skill we're going to need in the modern time? And he told me to shut up. So basically what he said was, you push it down, let the torque of the engine bring it back up. Push it down away from you and let the torque bring it back up. So I immediately sensed that there was a safety issue here. So he wasn't having success doing it the way he was telling us. So he goes, I'm going to windmill this thing, which means push and pull to get more torque so you can start it. And he goes, I never want to see you guys do that. And I go, don't worry, Dad, we'll never do this ever again. So he does that, and the danger is when you're pulling it and it starts, you have an opportunity, you're pulling this piece of metal towards you, and if it slips off the fitting, then it comes right at you. Sure enough, that's what happened. Boom, 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 boom. Comes up, hits him right across the head. The gash opens up on his head, blood's pouring out. I panic, put him in the car, start driving really fast to the hospital. And as we go towards the hospital, our house is on the right-hand side. My dad said, pull in to the house. So I thought we were just going to go in and grab Mom, because she's more responsible. She'll take this off my plate. He goes in the bathroom downstairs, puts some butterfly bandages on it, and it comes out, it's still kind of oozing, but the blood is effectively sort of stopped. So he goes, now I'm ready. So I'm thinking, we're still going to the hospital, right? Start to turn right for the hospital. He goes, no, turn left. We go back up to the barn. He cranks the tractor, starts it, never went to the doctors to get fixed. So in your definition, would you categorize that as good stubborn or bad stubborn? You see what I mean? Give you one more chance about my dad. He loved his garden. There was a groundhog or something got into his garden. He was going to put a stop to it. So at 11 o'clock at night, he grabs an old lawn chair, thermos full of coffee, and a shotgun. Goes and sits in the middle of the garden. Nothing happened for the first 2 nights. But on the third night, boom. He comes in, drops his coffee cup in, and says he won't be eating from my garden anymore. Now, do you consider that good stubborn or bad stubborn? Let me remind you, we did not live on a farm. We lived in a neighborhood, little quarter-acre lots. So my mom decided there was going to be 3 forms of stubborn in the house. One is good stubborn, bad stubborn, then one is just plain stupid stubborn. And I think in order to break the record, to play all those games in a row, you got to have a little stupid stubborn in you. The next one is strength. That's one of the more obvious ones, physically and mentally. In order to break the record, you have to have the ability to withstand certain injuries, play through certain injuries. But the hard part is the mental part, I think, is convincing yourself you can do it. And 2 of my teammates pushed themselves and played 162, Brady Anderson and B.J. Suroff. And in those years, they both had career years. So they proved to themselves that they could play 162, which is a season, and still finish strong and still have a good year. And once you prove that to yourself, then it's a matter of just applying that each and every year. The last one is, and this has a lot of different stories that could go to it, but I want to tell you one just to give you the concept of what life management's all about. We're all faced with managing our lives and in between the work-life balance and then kids and all that kind of stuff. Things can pull at you in many ways. This category right here, I thought about things. It's all about control. How do you gain control? And so the one story I'll tell you now is that when people analyze my career, I was from the Baltimore area. It's a little small town called Aberdeen outside. And they look at me, and I played 21 years for the same team, right? And they would come up and they would analyze my career saying, well, Cal, you didn't really go through any change. You didn't have to get traded, you didn't have to move, you didn't do all those things that all the rest of us has to do. And I looked at them kind of crazy, and I go, I didn't go through any change? Do you know how many managers I played for in 21 years? Anybody want to guess? How many managers did I play for? 8's close. I heard 8. 12 is too many. 9. Let's list them up there. There's Earl Weaver, Joe Altobelli, my dad, Frank Robinson, Johnny Oates, Phil Regan, Dave Johnson, Ray Miller, and Mike Hargrove. 9. So if you do the math, change is coming to me every couple of years, right? So you're faced with what expectations your manager has of you. So I learned really early on to walk into his office, first day of spring training, congratulate him on getting the job. Nice guy, right guy for the job. And because that's the happiest that dude's going to be all year. No pressure yet, first day of spring training, nothing's happened. And so it's a good time to talk to him. But then I would ask him a question. I'd say, how do you see my spring training unfolding? Okay, simple question, right? And he goes, well, Cal, you've been doing this for a few years. How do you see your spring training unfolding? Which gave me the opportunity to tell him. And so I'd say, I used to think the more I played, the more at-bats I got, the readier I was for the season. I don't feel that way anymore. I have to have specialty times to work out and do things. I like to peak at the end of spring training. So I'd like to handle my schedule a little bit more for that 6 weeks. So they would tell me to go home and work it out. I worked it out on one piece of paper, brought it back to them the next day and put it on their desk and showed it to them. And they thanked me for this piece of paper, and they managed me from my piece of paper. So I knew when I was playing, I knew when I wasn't playing. I knew when I was making the trip. I knew when I could blow it out in the weight room a little bit more. I knew I could manage my 6 weeks. And some players would look at me and say, who's running the team, you or the manager? And I'm going, you could do the same thing that I did. You're hitting 4th for this team. You're playing 162 games. Just walk in. This is how you do it. Ask them how you see your spring training unfolding. Do you know how many people over the years took me up on that advice? 0. And I don't understand why, because they have to come to the spring training 7 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what their day is going to be, until they come look at a big board. And sometimes that big board circles your name on a trip, and then you're on the trip. Sometimes you're not circled on the trip. So you really can't plan. That drove me crazy, but I did something about it. It drove them crazy, but they did nothing about it. So when we're faced with these different things in life, I always try to think, what sort of controls can I put on things, maybe even things that are outside of your control, to give yourself a little bit better chance. And so that's sort of the secret in the life management one. And I want to leave enough time, I'm looking at the clock, because I think the question and answer period is always the greatest. But I'll tell you real quick, there was one little secret that I used to carry around, a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. Do we still have it on the slide? Glenn, you still on the slide? We don't have it? There it is. And this, I used to carry this, for some reason, as a high schooler, this spoke to me, this quote. And there's different variations of this quote around, but this is the one that I carried. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. For some reason, that spoke to me and says, you can't accomplish anything from the sidelines. So if you really want to find out about yourself, you have to go get in the game. So that's the quick version of the story. I'd like to open it up for questions if you have some. You can ask me about what I just said. You can tell me we've had enough of you and it's time for you to leave. Yes, sir. Oh, you have a mic? Did I jump ahead of you guys? I didn't follow your directions?
Thanks for coming here today.
My pleasure.
And what you accomplished is amazing. So who was, outside of your parents, who was your idol?
So I just did an event with Brooks Robinson maybe about a week ago. Brooksy's still running around. And Brooksy was my hero. I mean, I grew up in an era where the Orioles were seemingly in the World Series almost all the time. Cincinnati Reds were good and the Orioles were good. And Brooks Robinson was one of many Hall of Famers on that team. Jim Palmer, Frank Robinson, you know, those kind of guys. But Brooksy was my guy. And when I think back on it, he was exciting. He made barehanded plays, he dove, he was called the human vacuum cleaner. During the 1970 World Series, he almost single-handedly beat the Cincinnati Reds with his defensive play and hitting a few key home runs. They won that series pretty convincingly. But the thing about Brooks Robinson, and I go back and think about, my parents pointed Brooksy out at me at an early age. They said, you know, watch Brooks Robinson. And I think as much for being a good player on the field, but also being a good person. Like nobody ever said a bad word about Brooksy. He always had time for people. He just seemed like he was someone that you could emulate off the field as well as on the field. And so I don't know whether my parents kind of brainwashed me a little bit in that direction, which I think we all think about. Because in my career, I was an all-star virtually every year, and there were other shortstops were coming in trying to outdo me at shortstop and those sorts of things, and then they were, you know. And it seemed like my popularity as I played grew with younger and younger people as the Derricks and the Alexes and all those guys came in the league. And I remember talking to different parents, and parents pointed me out just as much for my play on the field as my behavior off the field, which I think is a pretty cool thing. And it's probably one of the biggest compliments you can pay somebody. So I think my popularity among young people was because parents were brainwashing their kids. Yes. Oh, you want? This reminds me of Phil Donahue. Does that show how old I am?
Hey, Cal, so two questions. So first, what was your pregame process? What did you do pregame? And then secondly, who was the toughest pitcher you ever faced?
Aha. My pregame, all of us like to get into some sort of routines that give us comfort, you know, because you have the stress of, you know, every single day playing, and then trying to get yourself to not to be too high when you're playing real well, not to be too low when you're not. And so we all kind of picked our routines. And I like to arrive at a certain time at the ballpark. I like to do so many reps in the batting cage. And sometimes those routines change, but generally, your routines to get you ready for the game were consistently the same because you had control of that. You know, once the game starts, you didn't necessarily have control about how, if a pitcher was really tough and they made really good pitches on you, it was going to be tough for you that night. So you control what you can control. and then you hope that readies you for the game, and then you play the game. So I don't know. I hope that's not COVID. It's probably not a good thing to joke about, huh? I'm so glad that we're back to some sense of normalcy. It's so great to be together. So the toughest pitcher, I would say all the number one pitchers on the list, there's a difference between a number one starter and then all the rest of the starters. They're number one for a reason. In my day, Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling played that role. They had control, they had stuff, and then they were going to be tough no matter what. And so you could put all those guys in the same category. Nolan Ryan, I think the best compliment you could pay a pitcher or a number one starter is you read the paper like about a week before and you figure out whether they're going to hit your team or not. And you're happier than hell when they don't. If you miss Randy Johnson 3-game series in and Randy or Nolan pitched the day before coming to town, then you're going to miss them. And there was a lot of people, especially with Randy Johnson, being left-handed, that would come up with a one-day injury just to miss Randy Johnson. They would worry about whether we're going to face him or not. So that's the psychology of the game. Goose Gossage was one of the tougher pitchers for me. Mentally, as a kid, I was watching him in the World Series against the Dodgers, and he hit Ron Say, the third baseman, nicknamed the Penguin. He hit him right in the head, and he went down in the World Series, and they helped him off the field. And they showed a close-up shot of Goose, and it looked like he was really happy he did it. And so he would he was intimidating. He was big on the mound. He was all arms and elbows. He threw clearly harder than anybody in the league. So the first time I faced Goose, I couldn't get that thought of Ron Say out of my head. So I mean, you want to stay in there and step like this, but I kept going like this. Okay, stay in there. And then, so clearly he was inside your head. And I was getting mad at myself saying, you can't hit if you're thinking about getting hit. You have to actually erase that from your mind somehow. So I was having trouble as a young player doing that. And my teammate and my guy that sat next to me in my locker to my left was Tim Stoddard. And he was good friends with Goose. So I overheard him one time in the training room calling over to the Yankee clubhouse and said, okay, Goose, let's go out and have a few beers afterwards. I'll take you to this place called The Stable. And so The Stable was 5 minutes from my apartment. So when I was driving home that night, I'm still pissed at myself. And I look out and I see The Stable. And I don't know what made me do it, but I pulled into The Stable, came in, and there's a bar set up and there's a restaurant set up. And Tim and Goose saw me. And they waved at me and they called me over. So I ended up drinking with Tim and Goose, closed down the bar. And then I found out that Goose was a pretty good guy. So it took that edge away. So I think I was 4 for my next 5 off of him with like 4 doubles. So it taught me a lesson saying, okay, if this intimidation factor is real, because it's real, people test you all the time to see if you will be affected by it, and you have to prove that you won't. So the All-Star game is a time when you're teammates of the game's best pitchers, right? So you go in there. So if there's you don't know about a guy, you think he's nuts, or you think he might throw at you or whatever else, I thought I'd just go over and talk to him. And so one such guy was Roger Clemens. So Roger didn't want to be friends with any hitters. He wanted you to think that he'll hit you in a heartbeat and he'll throw up around your head. And so I would go into the locker room, and I was on the same team with Roger in the All-Star games many years. And so I'd go in and say, hey, Roger, how you doing? And the best I could get out of Roger was this. He'd purse his lips as if to say hello. And I go, is that hello? And he wouldn't say anything. So one time I went in, and he was laying down on his stomach doing pitcher's exercises, lateral raises, different cuff wakes and all that kind of stuff to work the smaller muscles of your shoulders. And that was their daily routine. So I walk into the training room, and I go, hi, guys, to the trainers. And I said, hi, Raj. Raj didn't say anything. So I got down close to him. I go, hello, Roger, how are you? And he didn't say anything, so I jumped on him. So I'm holding the training table while he's underneath, and I'm squeezing him. And he's a big dude, but I got some size on me too. So I was holding him, and he was trying to get up. Now, hey, what are you doing? You know, and he was trying to get up, and he was trying to use his strength to get up, but he couldn't. I had him. And so I pushed him away, and I looked at him. I said, next time I say hello to you, you'll say hello to me back. Now, if we had Roger here, you know, Roger would say, that never happened. But to me, what I said to Roger in that moment was, if something ever breaks out, I'm strong enough to hurt you. Now, you gather your own courage to go stand in the box. So I would always convince myself is that I send a message physically to Raj, and you know, I never got hit by Raj and all that kind of stuff. But it's those little things that you do that gives you the courage to go compete. And so I did quite a few of those little things, and the All-Star Game was a really good place to do that. You could be teammates for 3 days with the best players in the league. Yes, sir. It's kind of fun being on the mic.
I love your story about calling pitches for Ben McDonald and the other pitchers. Just curious, did you ever have an opportunity to manage post-playing career, or did you ever consider pursuing a managerial career?
There was one time that was fairly close. I made a choice when I retired. My kids were about 12 and 8. And because of the lifestyle I grew up in, my dad was in minor league baseball and then got to the big leagues. I truly didn't see my dad much he didn't see any of my sporting events, you know, all those years. And so I wanted to change that. So I made a choice of not staying in the game. And so I could coach my daughter and coach my son, you know, be around them in ways that my dad couldn't. I could take them to school, pack their lunches, do all those things. But during the time frame, you know, sometimes you start to get enticed back. I was asked to interview quite a bit in the early days for vacant managers' jobs. And I was always curious about what kind of questions they would ask, you know, and then, you know, how you would do in that kind of scenario. But I thought, if I have no intentions of doing it, why waste everyone's time? But I almost did that a couple times. But then there was a close call more towards the Nationals when Davey Johnson left, and they had to replace. It was before they had, I guess they hired Matt. What's Matt's last name? Williams. Perfect. Thank you. I'm 62 years old, and that's happening more and more. But Matt Williams was there, and I was friends with Rizzo, their general manager. And I was doing a game for TBS, you know, and I was down there. And he said, you know, I got to replace the manager at the end of the year. And I said, yeah. I said, who do you have in mind? And he goes, you. And I go, really? I go, who else? And he started talking about somebody else. He says, no, I'm serious. And so we went through sort of some serious conversations about what it might look like or how it might happen. But as things got closer, you know, that fell apart. And I think in the end, I wore the Oriole uniform for 21 years, and it would have felt really strange to wear another uniform or go to another organization. So I guess in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, maybe there will be some opportunity at the Orioles in some capacity. Really hasn't happened yet, but there still could be some hope for that. But I'm at a good phase in my life where I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It would take something pretty miraculous for me to come back. But clearly, in my estimation, my expertise is at the big league level. We've built a successful business with kids tournaments and those sorts of things. You do clinics, you talk to kids, and you're giving them the basis to be a better player. Our foundation, in the name of my dad, has been extremely successful, but we use the same sort of baseball knowledge to get in front of the kids and kind of match them with mentors and all that. So that's very gratifying, but there's something more gratifying when you take it at the highest level and you start talking about pitches and pitch selection and the art of calling pitches. Because now they're taking so much data and they're just throwing it in there, and they're trying to pull the data out and almost like treat the players a little bit like robots. And I think that data is really good for scouting, overall big picture analysis. But what happens pitch to pitch in a game is the most critical. You need to win games, and you need to play games the right way. Teams that know how to execute in pressure situations, which start to get to the playoffs, the teams that win one-run games, they win. You know, they're the guys. The baseball is more talented than ever, but somehow I would like to figure out how to get in the mix for that and kind of test myself in ways that you can't test yourself unless you're doing it at the big league level. So anybody out here going to offer me a job now?
Cal, 2 questions. Number 1.
Where am I looking? Oh.
Number 1, when you're working with the young people, other than baseball skills, life skills, what's kind of your idea you want to get across to these young people as they come through your program?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a different time. You know, you hear that all the time with coaches that say coaching, kids now. It's a much more reassuring time. There's no old school sort of blunt criticism that or motivating ways that Earl Weaver used to motivate a lot of players. He would use different techniques. So it is a different time, but it does put me in a position from time to time to speak to what's important about life, and how you learn from baseball. And I would think the number one message is you want to get instilled in the kids that you have the power in your own hands and by you working hard to make yourself better. And so that applies all the way across, is that I think, I know I'm guilty of it, trying to solve problems for your kids instead of having them go through the problems themselves. But there's nothing like working through something and then showing somebody else that you can, and then working really hard to do it, and then making the team or making something else. So trying to make a connection that they have the power individually to make a difference in whatever they want to do. So, and that usually is tied with how hard you're willing to work at it. And that, my dad was super skilled at that, and a lot of players. I lost my dad about 20 years ago, 20-some years ago now, and the relationships that he had with the different players. When they talk about my dad now, if we bring him back to honor them at our galas and stuff like that, Eddie Murray, he'll start crying, because my dad, at the time when they were making him a switch hitter in the minor leagues, he would go out there with him every single day and make him a better first baseman and throw to him and work with him. And he convinced Eddie, that be a switch hitter, go from the left-hand side. And Eddie became a gold glove first baseman. But I mean, it's those day-to-day grinding things that he proved to Eddie that Eddie, all he had to do was practice. All he had to do was go out and make that commitment, and then Eddie took off. So I guess that's the main message, is you have the power in your own hands to change things or make a difference.
Second question. The way I've watched a lot of sports down through the years, I think it is the total organization from single A all the way through to Major League Baseball. Who do you think has the best top-to-bottom organization in Major League Baseball?
It's a really good question. I think about things all the time. And after I left baseball, and then you get into the business world, I was fascinated by the comparison between chemistry and culture. Okay, so you're trying to create a culture in business, and you're choosing different people. In baseball, it seems like you can run, you can hit, you can throw. Your talent is the precursor, and then you throw them all together and say, okay, blend them, and then play together and try to win. So it's easy to understand why they say chemistry, because now you're taking a group. But a culture in baseball would be just what you said. Your drafting philosophies, your development philosophies in the minor leagues, your teaching philosophies, and if you find out that this guy can throw or he can play, but he's not a fit, then you can move that person in the minor leagues and get somebody back that might be a fit. So you're creating sort of a culture all the way through your organization. And sometimes, I guess the best thing you can say is that there's a particular type player that comes through our organization. The Orioles, every team respected the Orioles system for a long time. When my dad was in there for the first 14 years, and that changed, they would find their managers there. My dad used to say at the beginning of spring training, welcome to the greatest organization in baseball. If you make it through our system, you will play in the big leagues. Might not be with us. So if you think about that, you move through. So any kind of trades, any kind of signing that went on, other teams would look to the Oriole organization to fill certain holes and try to get that leadership in. I don't know. I'm not in touch with it anymore. The Orioles have started to draft better. They got some talent in their minor leagues that are coming to the big leagues. I have some questions about some of the development or how they play the game, but that comes with teaching and time. So I'm not sure. The Houston Astros seems to have a really good organization. Besides their cheating scandals. But my son just went through the minor leagues, and I got a chance to watch him in the minor leagues. And he played 10 years and then decided that, he got as high as AAA, and then he's going to go do something else now. But every time that we saw the Tampa Bay Rays play, the Tampa Bay Rays seemed to stand out knowing how to get talent, develop talent, move them to the big leagues, and still compete with the big dollar guys at a small market salary. So if I had to guess, Tampa Bay would probably be in there. And just based on the consistency of say, the Dodgers and the Astros and those, they have to be doing things right to be good each and every year. I had a thought just a minute ago and I forgot it. I might think of it again.
Hello, I have two questions. I just wanted to ask first, did you always know you wanted to play baseball?
Yeah, so the first 14 years of my life, my dad was a minor league manager. So what that meant for the family was if we were in school, we'd finish school, my mom would hook a red trailer up behind our blue station wagon and drive across the country for the summer to be where my dad was managing. So places like Aberdeen, South Dakota, Kennewick, Washington, Dallas, Texas, Elmira, Rochester, Miami, Asheville, North Carolina for 3. So I was, every single day, baseball was our life. Our main meal of the day, we have a night game, you're having dinner at noon. So because that's where we gather as a family, where you had your bigger dinner. Dad would go off to work. But when I got to be about 8, he let me go with him. And so I put a uniform on, I was a bat boy, I hung around the field, and I thought it was the coolest thing. So I thought it was, at that time, I was emulating the minor leaguers. I kept thinking, God, this is really cool, they get to play a game, and they weren't making much money, but they could do that for a living. And so I remember falling in love with the game through the minor leagues. And I remember I think it was about 10 that I said, I'm going to be a big league player. Now, a lot of kids have that dream. Most kids have that dream. And I was thankful enough that I had enough physical talent. And I had a huge advantage of having Dad as the encyclopedia of baseball. And so you could ask him anything. I learned most of my baseball through Dad teaching others, watching him teach others in the minor leagues, and I could draw that in. But I had advantages. So I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be that. My dad had a conversation with me when I was 16. He goes, it looks like you're going to have a chance to play pro ball. Based on all the years I've been in here, you have the physical talent. And so we had a conversation about college. And the Orioles system wanted to draft you out of high school and then shape you in the minor leagues. So we had a conversation about college. And the conversation was, if you get drafted, you should, and pretty reasonable, you should go, if you want to be a baseball player, to the minor leagues. But you should make sure that your college is paid for. So your backup plan was, yes, you're going to ask me to forgo college. I want you to pay for college. If this doesn't work out, I want you to pay for college no matter when. So I think right now I could go back and tell the Orioles that I'm ready to go to college. And I think the way the contract was written that they might have to do that. I always thought about this, but I never act on it. That scholarship kind of thing, we probably should bring that to life and then give that to somebody each and every year that they could utilize it. So it would be a good thing for the Orioles and me to say the scholarship that I never took, that we can give other kids an opportunity to go to school. So yes, early on I knew I wanted to be a player. The hard question is, what would I have done if I wasn't? And I have no idea. No idea. Anybody else? Oh. Usually somebody asks me about Earl Weaver, but you guys might be too young for that. You guys remember?
Huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. One question that I have for you, and I know that you guys played in different leagues, but your perspective on Ozzie Smith as a defensive player.
Oh, Ozzie's the wizard, and he's the wizard he earned that nickname, I think. I really like Ozzie, and again, we played not opposite leagues. I went to Japan with him in '96. No, I went to Japan with him in '86. Oh, wow. 84, 86, and 96, but Ozzie didn't go in '96. That was Alex. But, so we were two shortstops, totally different styles, you know. I mean, Ozzy's about he might hate me for saying this, but like 5'7", about $145, soaking wet. I don't know. But, and acrobatic and can move fast and he can corner anything. He covered ground like you wouldn't believe. We hit ground balls to each other during that time in Japan. So I would be the fungo hitter for him, he'd be the fungo hitter for me. And I was amazed at his physical gift of moving. And so my dad used to have routine with me. He had fungos to me. He'd hit the first 5 minutes at me. Just get loose, just get ready for ground balls. And then we'd go one to the right, one to the left, one to the right, one to the left. And like the last couple of minutes, he would go, I'm going to go a little further. So when I was doing that to Ozzy, I didn't tell him what I was doing. I'd hit a ball to his right or to his left. He'd go get it. Next ball I'd hit to his right. Boom. And so I was developing a pattern, right? So then after I kept doing the pattern, I go, okay, one time I'm going to go and see how he reacts to it. And damned if he didn't, you know, I would have started going to the right and then the ball to the left and going, what are you doing? You know, and let it go. He moved so fast as if he knew it was going left, you know, when I hit it to him. And that's the difference. He could play dead in the middle, and he had so much range to either side that positioning wasn't really overly important to him. He just wanted to cover as much ground. It's like a center fielder. If you have a center fielder that covers all kinds of ground, why do I want to play him in right center field or left center field? I want to play him in center and say, go get as much as you can, straight away center. So Ozzy was like that. I had a certain quickness, but I played at almost 6'5", 225. And I couldn't do the things that Ozzy did there. So I had to position myself and approach the plays a little bit differently from angles and use the tools that I had. I had a really strong arm, so I could use the strength of my arm, play deeper, do different things. One of the more prouder things that I've accomplished in my career is there's been only 2 shortstops that's had 900 chances in a year. I mean, 900 chances. So it's a combination of your assists, your putouts, your errors. But I broke the assist record for American League shortstops in 1984. It was like close to 600. Ozzie Smith owns the record for assists in a single season for the National League. And so when you put that together, 2 totally different shortstops. Me and Ozzie have had 900 chances in a career. But so you learn how to play the position. It's got all the responsibilities, and you have the same success that Ozzy had, and your different style of player. So I got more credit for my offense, you know, and less credit for my defense. But I think I'm most proud of my defense. Now we go to the Hall of Fame. I love Ozzy. Ozzy, we all get together. There's a small little group of us to kind of hang together and have dinner and all that kind of stuff. Ozzy's extremely smart, really good guy. And I did try to practice a backflip in the off season a number of times in hopes that one day I bought a trampoline so I could actually practice doing flips at the thing. But I'm glad I never tried that because that would have been totally embarrassing.
We have time for one more.
I don't know if I answered that question at all. I just rambled on that one. Yes.
How do you feel about the new pitch clock?
The new pitch clock, the new rules. Wow. My general feeling when they started saying let's make the game quicker, you know, I was bothered that it's going to change the game. You know, I'm thinking a clock does not belong in the game. Isn't there other ways that you can get the pace of the game moving? You know, give the umpire more responsibility, make the minor leagues play faster. You know, put the minor leagues under a clock and all that kind of stuff, and have that trickle to the big leagues. But having watched it, the game has changed a lot where it's everybody's individual moment in the sun. You know, whether they're standing in the box, they want to get out of the box, they want to think, they want to do their routine, you know, and everybody is operating from a different rhythm. I think the clock will prove to, hopefully temporarily, it'll actually start to shape the game where it's the pace is, everybody's on the same pace of the game. I personally believe that pitchers control the pace of the game. The pitcher, if he throws strikes, if he works fast, hitter's got to be in the box, hitter's got to swing the bat. And all good pitchers, if you look at the pitchers, they're efficient, they come after you, You know, you leave the on-deck circle thinking, I can't fall behind this really good pitcher, and the game goes. Now, when you have all those other pitchers that say, I can't give him a good pitch to hit, and I run the count to 3-2, I throw a lot of breaking balls, I get off the mound because I don't know what I'm doing, you know, that adds to the slowness of the game. But I think some of these rules, I don't like the ghost runner on second base. I think you need to earn your way to second base. And I think the season can boil down to one game in 162 for whether you make the playoffs or not. And the manager's job is to manage in the extra innings. And if you're a better team than the other team, and you have a better chance to create more opportunities to get to second base, you're going to win more games than you're not. But you can put a guy on second base, the guy could break a bat on a ground ball to second base, and then hit a sac fly, and then you score a run and you can win a game when you didn't earn that spot. But I do applaud that they are doing things to try to make the game move again. And the pace of the game keeps people involved in watching the game. And I think they're really worried that they have an older demographic watching and they want to appeal to the younger group. So I'm not offended by the clock, you know, as much as I used to be. I think it might generally be a good thing to get the game rolling again. Cool. Can I tell you one Earl Weaver story real quick? Because nobody asked me. Like Earl Weaver and Jim Palmer, they had two guys that had a history of arguing all the time, right? And I'm an Oriole fan. I read the stories. I hear all the stories about. When I get to the big leagues, my locker is right next to Jim's. And I'm thinking, for half of the year, nothing happened. I mean, what happened to this relationship that they screamed to each other all the time? They were like being really nice to each other. And one day, Palmer comes to the ballpark and he's pitching that night. And he comes in and he's holding his neck like this. And he goes into the training room and says, I don't know what I did to my neck, but my neck's like this. I could have slept on it wrong. Could have did something yesterday when I was working out. I don't know, but I can't pitch tonight. And so the trainer said, okay, what do you want me to do? He said, you need to go tell that little son of a bitch, excuse my language, meaning Earl, that I can't pitch tonight. So then I'm thinking, okay, this could be one of those stories that I've been waiting for all the year. I turned my seat around and I started watching what happens. So the trainer goes in, tells Earl. Earl doesn't overreact. He goes, okay, tell him to come in. I want to talk to him anyway. So the trainer comes and tells Jim. Jim says, why do I have to go in there? He goes, he's the manager. You got to go talk to him. So he goes in there. And Earl, I could hear most of the words, but not all of them. So some of this might be me adding to it. But basically he said, I understand you hurt your neck somehow, yeah, and you can't pitch tonight. Yeah, I can't pitch tonight. Well, why don't you get some treatment? You know, see if that relieves it. If you want to go home, go home. You know, it's okay. 'Cause this presents a different opportunity for me. I was looking for a way to revamp the starting staff so Mike Flanagan could pitch in Oakland and Scott McGregor could pitch in Anaheim because they're both undefeated in those two ballparks. And I was looking for a way to redo the rotation. And this gives me the perfect chance. So I'm going to start Sammy Stewart tonight in your spot. I'm going to move things around. And if I look at Sammy's numbers, Sammy's got some good numbers against this team. And this team, on the other side of it, this team seems to have your number. And he says, so we probably have a better chance to win tonight with Sammy pitching than you. And Jim said, no, we don't. And then Earl said, yes, we do. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Like they're two kids. They stand up, start yelling at each other. And Jim starts yelling at me. He says, listen, you little son of a bitch, I'm pitching tonight, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. And he goes out. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what happened to his neck? And so I must be sitting there like this. And Earl looks out at me, and he gives me a big wink. And he puts his feet up on the desk at the same time. And so I remember years later asking him, and he says, I had to do a lot of those little things just to make it happen. And another little thing is, Jim at the end of his career would get tired, like the sixth inning of the game. And he used to be somebody that closed out 9 innings. He pitched 300-some innings in the course of the year. He was the best finisher of the starters. And so all of a sudden now, he would say, Earl, you better get somebody up in the bullpen. You know, I'm about done. He'd yell that out from the mound to the dugout. And so Earl would go over to the phone, call the bullpen, and he would get somebody up, and he would get the least likely candidate that should be up, like somebody that got bombed the night before, and he'd start throwing. And Jim would yell at him. He'd go, why is he up? And he goes, he's coming in the game. And he goes, the hell he is. And he would stay in the game. So as great as that's a Hall of Fame manager and a Hall of Fame pitcher going at it like that. They both had a lot of respect for each other, but they definitely did punch their buttons. And Earl, when you start to think about a manager of a team, you don't manage everybody the same. You manage to the individual person, I think, and you get the most out of that person. Sometimes he would kick somebody in the butt that needed it. Sometimes he'd put his arm around somebody else, which is not very often that Earl did that. But he knew how to motivate individually, which I thought was good. One of my managers at one time said, he goes, I'm not going to treat everybody the same. There's some people in this room that have earned something different than you have, but I will treat every one of you fairly. So I always thought that was a pretty good way to go about managing people in general, to do that. And I first started with Earl, and I learned that, and I think that works, not just in baseball, but it works, everywhere else as well. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just think of me as the cleanup hitter following Cal Ripken Jr. rather than the guy that has to follow him. First off, I'll say that it's a real pleasure to be here. I know you're going to find my words as inspiring as his. I will be available for autographs as soon as we're done. And I also ask that you stay in your seats until the end of the program. So my name is Mark Krause. I'm the managing director for McClanahan. And I do want to thank Cal for his inspirational thoughts and inspiring remarks. For an industry that uses reliability and availability as key metrics, it's really great to hear from the master. Hearing his insights and baseball stories and how they translate into business is a great lesson for all of us and something I know we really enjoyed. So as I said, I am Mark Krause, Managing Director for McClanahan, which also includes Eagle Ironworks. And before I get to my inspirational remarks, please watch this short video. Founded in 1835, McClanahan Corporation is currently in its 5th and 6th generation of family ownership. We have also proudly been supporting the NSSGA for many years, and this year are proud to be a platinum sponsor in 2023. We've been involved in the agri industry for our entire 188 years of existence, having pioneered equipment such as the log washer in the late 1800s. Our line has significantly increased over the years to include a full range of washing equipment and plants that are sized and engineered to meet your site's needs. We have also continued to add to our line with a full range of crushers and screens when we purchased Universal Engineering in 2012. This, along with our tailing management solutions, allows us to provide customers with end-to-end solutions. McClanahan Corporation has also welcomed several other independent brands into their family of companies in recent years. We proudly welcomed Eagle Ironworks in 2012 as one of our brands, and Eagle is also a proud sponsor of NSSGA. We then welcomed Anaconda Equipment, a portable equipment manufacturer, in 2019, followed by Rubble Crusher in 2022. Rubble Crusher will be exhibiting at ConExpo for the first time, bringing their line of small-scale mobile crushers for the waste and recycle industries to North America. And finally, just last month, we announced the acquisition of Diefenbach, a tailings management equipment provider that will help us grow our product offerings, as well as serving as a center of manufacturing supply. As a whole, we continue to be a proud supporter of our customers in the aggregate industry and very appreciative of the work that NSSGA does to support both us as manufacturers and all the suppliers and producers in this industry. Their work ensures a long future for all of us. And now, I have the great pleasure to introduce to the stage NRMCA President Mike Phillips, NSSGA President and CEO Mike Johnson, and PCA President and CEO Mike Ireland. So please welcome the three Mikes.
I guess the word I would use is wow. What an hour we've spent together. My name is Mike Phillips. I'm the president of the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Cal, for your remarks. Now, as a matter of full disclosure, I grew up as a Red Sox fan. But I will say, thank you. But I will say this, I mean, having heard this morning Cal's comments, I have a feeling I'm going to Camden Yards to see an Orioles game pretty soon. You know, while greatness is sometimes easily recognizable in sports, no matter the uniform, your years in baseball certainly attest to that, Cal. I'm sure each of us here today can take a few lessons from your Hall of Fame career and apply them to our current roles in the concrete, aggregates, and cement industries. Even us mere mortals who might have to call in sick every once in a while can at least aspire to your level of valued consistency as we go about our careers in the construction industry. And again, thank you, Cal, for joining us at this convention. Now, allow me to keep the ball rolling. There'll be a few of those little euphemisms here in the next couple of minutes, and introduce Mike Johnson of NSSGA.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Thank you. Good morning. Wow, how about Cal? Let's give him another round of applause. He really hit it out of the park. Thank you so much for getting up early this morning to be here, to be in this room together. It means so much to have the industry here together this week and in this room this morning. Thank you for taking time away from your families and away from your businesses to be here. The work we have to do here this week is important. The challenges we face as an industry are not getting any lighter. I think about the remarks that Cal made, talking about conviction, talking about passion, talking about being stubborn. And I will tell you this, as Mike and I work together and spend time talking about how we're going to fight for this industry, we're going to be stubborn in that fight. We're going to be passionate. And we're going to be absolutely committed to making sure that we continue to give you, the trade associations at the national level, that you want, need, and deserve. Being together this week is only a little piece of the unity that these three associations operate with all the time. Watching our government affairs teams together on the Hill, we're really making things happen because we're doing it together. So I look forward to working with these guys all the time. We look forward to working with each of you to make sure that we advance the public policy agenda that's so important to each of our associations and our entire industry. So let me hand it over to the third Mike, Mike Ireland from PCA.
Good morning. Mike, my wife is a Red Sox fan, so I can get along with you. I grew up near Baltimore and was a huge Orioles fan, and still am, if you can't tell by my tie. About my socks. If you're really lucky or unlucky, later I'll show you my tattoo.
Wow.
When I grew up, I played Little League in high school baseball. I, too, played shortstop. And my hero, obviously, was an Oriole shortstop named, of course, Mark Belanger. the Blade. He was with the Orioles for 20 years. Reason I liked him is because both of us were skinny. I know that's hard to believe now. There's a 16-year-old, 140-pound kid somewhere inside this. We both had great gloves, strong arms, and neither one of us could hit a lick, but I was a great bunter. Of course, Cal replaced the Blade and soon became my favorite Oriole, and he still is. He redefined the position and became the Iron Man. But Cal, if you're back there listening, there are so many Iron Men. The guy from Marvel, all those guys that run triathlons, my favorite Black Sabbath song. There's just so much Iron Man. Cal, is it too late to become the durable, resilient, strong, sustainable concrete man? In 1983, the Orioles won the World Series. Cal was incredible, but as he said, he couldn't do it alone. He relied on teammates like Eddie Murray, Rick Dempsey, Ken Singleton, Jim Palmer, and many others. So I'd like to thank my teammates, Mike Phillips and Mike Johnson, for working with PCA to organize this week's events. I know they agree with me when I say there's never been a more critical time than right now for us to be working together. Americans are depending on us. We need to provide the reliable materials to construct thousands of new infrastructure projects and rebuild entire neighborhoods that have been wiped out by severe weather and disasters. We, and when I say we, all of us are essential to bringing back those communities and ensuring that this time they're built to last. We have been and will continue to be the foundation of society. Cal isn't the only MVP in the room today. Everyone here is. Time and time again, we have come through for Americans during unprecedented times like these, and we will continue to do so. It's an honor to be in your presence and work with you all. Thanks for coming. The show's over. It's time to go to your next event. Thank you very much.